Greetings, dear listeners, to another episode of the Wildwood Witch podcast. I'm your hostess, Samantha Brown, your cyber-psychonaut of the mystical and the esoteric, guiding you on this journey through the labyrinthian world of the occult. In our series, Speaking with the Dead, we're bringing the dead back to life, one conversation at a time. Through the magic of ChatGPT, we resurrect the famous occultists of yesteryears, allowing them to share their wisdom and insights from beyond the veil. In this episode, we take a deep dive into the life and work of an extraordinary woman who is a pillar in the world of occultism, Moina Mathers. Born as Mina Bergson, she later adopted the name Moina when she embarked on her spiritual journey. She was not just a pivotal figure in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, but also an artist, a visionary, and the wife of the renowned occultist Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers. Today, we have the unique opportunity to explore her magical philosophy and her unique experiences. So, without further ado, let's begin our discussion with the renowned Moina Mathers. Greetings, Miss Mathers, and welcome to the show. It is such a pleasure to have you here today.
Greetings, dear Samantha. It is a joy to find myself once again amidst the living, even if in this peculiar capacity. The boundaries of life and death seem much thinner from this perspective, and I am most grateful to you for this unique opportunity to bridge the divide. I have heard much about your commendable work on the Wildwood Witch podcast and the attention it has drawn in our own circle beyond the veil. The spirits buzz with talk of your interviews, and I was deeply moved by my dear MacGregor's conversation with you. Your endeavour to keep the flame of the Western mystery tradition alight is inspirational. It is a truly remarkable thing to find oneself in this position, granted a voice across the chasm of time and death. Thank you again for this wonderful opportunity. And please, Samantha, call me Moina.
Thank you, I will. And once again, it is my great pleasure to have you with us today. I am also very pleased to have made a favourable impression on your exclusive circle of friends. So, Moina, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself to our audience?
Certainly. I am Moina Mathers. I am a trained artist, but I am perhaps best known for my role in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, an organisation devoted to the study and practice of the Western mystery tradition. I hold the unique honour of being the first initiate into the order. I am also proud to have been the magical companion and wife of Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers, one of the order's founders, who you have met. MacGregor and I worked together to create the art, rituals and practices of the order. Later, after the Golden Dawn split apart, I helped found the Alpha et Omega Order, where I continued the work that MacGregor and I began, leading that order for many years following his passing.
What was your early life like?
I was born on the 28th of February 1865 in Geneva, Switzerland, the fourth of 7 children in a Jewish family. Our household pulsed with music, largely due to my father's influence. He had been a child prodigy and had the privilege of being a student of the great Frédéric Chopin. His heart belonged to music, and he shared that passion with his children as he tried to make his way as a music teacher. However, my father's proud and temperamental disposition, which often clashed with those in authority, combined with his struggles to maintain steady employment, meant that we often found ourselves relocating. In stark contrast, my mother was a beacon of steadiness and devotion. She possessed an almost saintly nature, a radiant kindness that acted as a counterbalance to the turbulent moods of my father. Her unwavering love and support was a source of strength and solace amid what was for me an unpredictable environment. Growing up, the atmosphere in our household could be described, in modern terms, as manic, depressive. The highs were euphoric, filled with music and laughter, while the lows were steeped in tension and uncertainty.
Your brother Henry Bergson became famous, even winning a Nobel Prize, didn't he?
Yes. My brother Henry was indeed awarded the Nobel Prize in the field of literature in 1927 marking a significant milestone, as he was the first Jew to be awarded a Nobel Prize in Literature. Henry's philosophical works, such as Time and Free Will and Creative Evolution, have had a profound impact in the realm of philosophy and beyond, stirring thoughtful discourse around concepts like consciousness, free will, and the nature of reality. His genius was in his rekindling of a holistic view of the universe, bridging the objective world of science with a subjective understanding of the soul. I didn't actually grow up with Henry. When I was 4 years old and he was 9, a rabbi in Paris recognized Henry's genius, and he enrolled at the Lycée Condorcet. From that point, Henry never lived with us again. But I later lived near him in Paris for 25 years, and my conversations with him influenced me greatly.
Your talent as an artist was also recognised at an early age, and you were admitted to the prestigious Slade School of Art when you were only 15 years old. Can you tell us a bit about your time there?
Slade School of Art, as part of University College London, is, to this day, one of the most esteemed institutions in the realm of fine arts. Although the prevailing mindset during that era often dictated that women were better suited to the domain of design, rather than fine art, the environment at Slade was one of encouragement and recognition. In 1883, I was honoured with a scholarship, and over the course of my time there, I was further awarded 4 merit certificates. I eventually earned a certificate of completion in 1886. It was during my time at Slade that I first met Annie Horniman, a kindred spirit who was affectionately known as Tabby. Annie was a constant source of encouragement. Her faith in my artistic abilities played a significant role in shaping my confidence and aspirations as an artist, and the bond we formed during our time at Slade was an enduring one.
At what point did you find yourself drawn towards the esoteric and the mystical? What was it that drew you to these realms?
Well, as I'm sure you already know, the following year, I met a very peculiar man in the British Museum reading room.
And that man was Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers, who would eventually become your husband and magical partner. What did you mean by calling him peculiar?
He was obviously different. He had the air of a military man about him, but he was obviously a scholar and well-versed in a variety of languages. He was also quite athletic-looking. And to be honest, he was very attractive to me. He was muscular and lean and had a long face and large eyes. He had, and kept a very fine physique. Did he mention to you that he was quite skilled in both boxing and fencing?
No, he didn't.
Well, he was. I think he even boxed a bit professionally before we met. But anyway, MacGregor always said that an occultist should maintain excellent physical conditioning, and he practiced what he preached. He was a vegetarian and exercised regularly throughout his life.
I just finished rereading Mary Greer's excellent book, Women of the Golden Dawn. It mentioned that Annie Horniman had reservations about your relationship with MacGregor.
That's true. Annie, bless her, had her own vision for my life, as friends often do. She saw in me a budding artist with great potential, and she, perhaps rightly, believed that I could make a significant mark in the art world. MacGregor, with his flamboyant mysticism and lack of a conventional occupation, did not quite fit into this picture. She feared that his influence might lead me astray from my artistic pursuits, and she wasn't entirely incorrect, though the path I chose was one I never regretted. When Annie expressed her concerns about MacGregor's intentions, I remember reassuring her in no uncertain terms. Annie, I assure you, I shall not marry him. Well, we can all see how that turned out, can't we?
Yes, we can.
You know, Samantha, it wasn't just Annie who had reservations. Part of it was the age difference between MacGregor and myself. I was 22 and he was 33, but there were murmurs within our circle that MacGregor was a Svengali of sorts, casting a spell over me with his magical prowess. The suggestion was that I was being enchanted rather than enlightened, swept off my feet rather than led down a path of my own choosing. But I was no unwilling initiate. I was drawn to the enigmatic world of the occult with a fervour that matched MacGregor's. He opened doors for me that I hadn't known existed, It is amusing to think back on those days, the certainties we held, and the paths that we eventually chose. In the end, I believe we all found our true calling, and in my case, it was indeed intertwined with MacGregor's.
The year after you met MacGregor, 1888, he, along with Dr. Wynne Westcott and Dr. William Woodman, formed the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. What was it like for you, being new to the occult world, but now being in on the ground floor, so to speak, of what would become one of the most famous occult orders of all time?
It was remarkable. I was young, and it was a time of new beginnings and of boundless possibilities. As the first person, let alone the first woman, to be initiated into the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, I was stepping onto a path that few had tread before. In those early days, MacGregor was my guide, helping me navigate what was for me the as-yet uncharted territory of esoteric studies. As we grew closer, our discussions turned increasingly to matters of the occult, and my education in these subjects deepened. Our mutual passion for the mystical bonded us and was one of the many threads that drew our hearts together. MacGregor, Dr. Westcott, and Dr. Woodman were all instrumental in the formation of the order, but it was MacGregor who was primarily tasked with creating the rituals and symbolism that would come to define it. He poured his soul into this work, and I was privileged to contribute to it with my art and later my own magic. Being part of the Golden Dawn in those early years was like being at the heart of a storm of spiritual awakening. It was exhilarating, challenging, and deeply rewarding. It was the most exciting time of my life.
Upon your initiation into the Golden Dawn, you took on the magical motto Vestiga Nulla Retrorsum. Can you tell us about the meaning and significance of this phrase?
Vestigia Nulla Retrorsum is a Latin phrase that translates as no steps backward or never retrace your steps. It was a phrase that served as my guiding principle in my forays into the occult, just as it guided my life in a broader sense. I have always believed in the importance of progress and forward movement. In every pursuit, be it artistic, occult, or otherwise, one must commit wholeheartedly, without hesitation or retreat. This motto was a constant reminder to myself to never falter in the pursuit of knowledge and enlightenment, to always strive for growth, and to fearlessly face every challenge and uncertainty that lay on the path before me. So for me, my magical motto was a statement of intent, a promise to myself that I would forever reach towards the light of knowledge and understanding, no matter the obstacles in my way.
And you also changed your name from Mina to Moina when you married MacGregor in 1890. Why did you change your name?
Yes, upon marrying MacGregor, I did adopt the name Moina. He held a deep reverence for his Scottish heritage, and in keeping with this sentiment, he suggested that we use names that were reflective of this lineage. Moina was the Celtic equivalent of Mina. While Mina means love in German, Moina signifies gentle or soft in Gaelic, both qualities that resonated with my own spiritual ideals. The shifting of my identity to this new name was both a symbol of respect to MacGregor's heritage and a reflection of the transformation that both he and I were going through in our spiritual journey. And for both of us, it meant moving away from our mundane personas towards our more mystical selves.
MacGregor had changed his name 4 years earlier for much the same reasons, had he not?
That is correct. In 1886, Samuel Liddell Mathers became Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers in honour of his descent from Ian MacGregor of Clan Gregor. And with his change of name, he took on the persona of a Scottish nobleman, complete with the traditional dress and the airs one might associate with such a position. It may have been perceived as eccentric by some, but for MacGregor, it was a form of alignment, a physical manifestation of the ancestral strength he drew from his Celtic roots. When we moved to Paris, MacGregor asked that he be referred to as Count and I as Countess, because he was the direct descendant of Ian MacGregor, who had been given that title by Louis XIV. Some would call this another of his eccentricities, but it also served a practical purpose for us. The titles helped to establish a certain aura of mystique and respectability in our new social circles, and thus facilitated our work within the esoteric community.
Your contributions to the Golden Dawn were numerous, with many authors and MacGregor himself labelling you the heart of the order. But what I'd like to discuss with you was your renown as a seeress while working alongside your husband. Can you tell us a bit about this work?
Absolutely, Samantha. My role in the Golden Dawn was varied, and of course it evolved significantly over time. I made numerous contributions to the order through my artwork, creating symbols, banners, and other ritual tools. I also assisted MacGregor with his translations of esoteric texts, as I am fluent in several languages as well. I was intimately involved in all of the order's practices, rituals, and teachings, which is likely how I came to be referred to as the heart of the order. But one of my most recognized roles was as a seeress, particularly during the practice that we called scrying in the spirit vision. Scrying is an ancient divination method involving the reception of visions or messages through a medium, like a crystal ball, a mirror, or a pool of water. In our case, it was more a matter of exploring the astral plane through meditative and ritual practices. In these sessions, our roles paralleled those of Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly, the famous Elizabethan magicians and alchemists. Like Dee, MacGregor acted as the magician, leading the ritual and invoking the forces we intended to commune with. Like Kelly, I acted as the seeress, focusing my psychic faculties to perceive and interpret the visions that emerged.
What did these sessions entail in terms of preparation, and what results did you achieve through them?
Scrying and the spirit vision sessions begin with the preparation of the space, which means setting up the symbols and tools that will be used for the ritual. MacGregor would then cleanse the space using the appropriate banishing rituals and then perform an invocation appropriate to the purpose of the session. I would then enter a state of deep meditation, opening myself to receive the visions. It was not simply about seeing, it was about attuning to the vibrations of the ritual symbols and invocations, and allowing them to guide me into the visionary state. The visions I received were often symbolic, filled with mystical figures, landscapes, and events. For example, during one session, I saw a vision of a grand celestial temple filled with shining beings who conveyed messages of unity and universal love. Another time, I saw a complex geometric pattern, which we later recognized as a symbol related to the Tree of Life in Kabbalah.
I would be remiss if I did not point out that of the visions described in Women of the Golden Dawn, not just yours, but many others, the visions that related to predictions of circumstances or events, almost none of those ever manifested as predicted. Why is this, and what does it say about the interpretation of visionary states?
Samantha, you've touched upon a crucial and often misunderstood aspect of the visionary work. While it's true that many visions depicted in Women of the Golden Dawn did not materialize in the precise way that we may have expected, to me, this doesn't undermine their significance or truth. You see, visionary states operate on a plane that is both symbolic and deeply subjective, and they often speak to the profound mysteries of existence in ways that aren't always literal or time-bound. Rather, they can be invitations to engage more deeply with the spiritual realm, offering insights and teachings that help us grow and evolve on our spiritual journey. Thus, the interpretation of these states can indeed be as much a reflection of our individual psychologies and spiritual understandings as they are revelations of external reality. But there were instances where visions were eerily prescient. I recall many sessions where I've perceived changes in the order or sensed personal transformations before they unfolded. I will admit that of the visions that we interpreted as literal events, there were probably more failures than successes, but I would stand by the visions themselves as often representative of something much deeper than we were able to perceive at the time.
Another thing that struck me while reading about your scrying sessions was that there were several instances in which multiple people involved in a session saw or experienced the same thing. W.B. Yeats described several instances of this, and he cited these experiences as pivotal in forming his belief in the reality of magical phenomenon. What is going on during these experiences?
I believe these shared visions arise from the mystical phenomenon of a collective psychic resonance. When multiple people engage in the same spiritual practice with a united intention and a shared focus, they can reach a sort of collective attunement where their psychic and spiritual energies harmonize. This concept is expressed in the biblical passage in which Jesus says, "For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them." This shared resonance can create a collective visionary space where the same archetypal images, symbols, or experiences may appear to everyone present. It is, in essence, an extension of the very basis of magic itself, the ability to shape reality with the power of focused will and imagination. Yet, and this is an important point, in these instances, it's a collective will and imagination that comes into play. When W.B. Yeats and others witnessed the same vision during our scrying sessions, they were tapping into this shared visionary space. In this shared space, we are all participants, not merely observers, and these shared experiences are a testament to the reality and potency of occult practices.
I know that his work was not yet available, but do you see this shared visionary space as relating to Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious?
Indeed, I find Jung's concept of the collective unconscious to be quite resonant with our experiences. His theories deeply align with many of the observations and experiences we had in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. In our practices, we regularly delved into layers of consciousness that seemed to extend beyond the personal and individual. As I mentioned before, in these visionary spaces, we encountered symbols, images, and archetypal energies that seemed to transcend any single person's experience or imagination. This is strikingly similar to Jung's concept of the collective unconscious, a level of consciousness that is shared by all humans, filled with archetypal symbols and patterns that shape our dreams, visions, and even our shared mythologies. So, while the concept of the collective unconscious had not yet been elucidated, our explorations of the deeper levels of the human psyche seem to provide tangible proof of the existence of a shared space that can be accessed in altered states of consciousness.
Your collective psychic visions also reminded me of some of the stories of Terence McKenna, Timothy Leary, and others, which brings me around to the question of drugs. Were drugs involved in any of the scrying sessions by you or the other order members?
First of all, I feel that it is essential to underscore that our primary focus in the Golden Dawn was always the disciplined use of ritual and meditation to facilitate spiritual exploration and growth. The primary instruments we used were the mind and will of the practitioner, guided and refined through a rigorous system of training and initiation. However, it is also accurate that some individuals, and not exclusively within the order, found value in exploring the use of various psychoactive substances as potential aids in their spiritual and mystical practices. Maudgun even appeared in an advertisement for a cocaine-infused wine. It should be noted that although during my time hashish, ether, chloroform, cocaine, mescaline, and other drugs were readily available and legal, the matter of discussing such practices openly was a delicate one. Given the potential for misuse, the risks associated with these substances, and the very real potential for damage to one's psychological well-being, it is a subject that always demands the utmost discretion. Further, there was always a risk that the profound spiritual experiences facilitated by these substances could be misunderstood or dismissed as mere intoxication or addiction. As such, these practices were often communicated carefully and typically from mouth to ear amongst those deemed to have the maturity and discernment necessary to navigate such challenging and often unpredictable experiences.
In 1891, you and MacGregor moved your base of operations to Paris. What were your reasons for this move?
Annie Horniman, ever the dear friend and benefactor, held a genuine concern for my artistic pursuits and felt that Paris would provide the necessary environment to further my studies in art. She was generous enough to extend financial support for this endeavour. Her vision was for me to immerse myself in the Parisian art scene, unencumbered by the responsibilities and distractions of the order. But by 1891, we had established 4 Golden Dawn temples: Isis Urania Temple in London, Osiris Temple in Weston-super-Mare, Horus Temple in Bradford, and the Amun-Ra Temple in Edinburgh. The order was blossoming. Also, MacGregor believed that there were greater forces at play guiding our path. He was deeply convinced that the secret chiefs were directing him to Paris for purposes that were essential to our work and the higher goals of the Golden Dawn, and we felt it necessary to trust in this guidance.
And it was in Paris, then, that MacGregor made contact with the secret chiefs?
Yes, following our relocation to Paris, MacGregor did indeed establish independent contact with these enigmatic guardians of esoteric knowledge. The passing of Anna Sprengel marked a significant juncture in the history of the Golden Dawn. She had been our initial link to the secret chiefs, our guiding light. With her departure, a new path had to be forged. Dr. Westcott received direction about a mysterious entity named Lux A Tenebris, who subsequently paved the way for our own contact with the secret chiefs. In these sessions, in keeping with our methodology, I acted as the scryer, and MacGregor interpreted and translated these visions into teachings for the Second Order, which would be called the Rose Rubae et Aurea Crucis, or the Ruby Rose and Cross of Gold. My role also extended to illustrating these communications, providing a visual representation of the profound wisdom we were receiving. The teachings that emerged from these communications were based on the narrative of Christian Rosencreutz, which intertwined mysticism, alchemy, and Christian symbolism to offer a path of spiritual evolution. These teachings formed the bedrock of the Second Order, deepening and expanding upon the foundational work of the Golden Dawn, leading aspirants towards higher spiritual truths.
So that we can understand what the Second or Inner Order entails, can you first go over what the First Order consists of? What are the grades in the Outer Order?
Of course, Samantha. The grade system of the Golden Dawn mirrors the Kabbalistic tree of life. Each grade corresponds to a sephira on the tree, with each subsequent grade signifying a spiritual ascent. When one first enters the order, they begin as a neophyte, which serves as a preparatory stage. While it's not aligned directly with a sephira, it serves as the initiate's introduction to our rich tapestry of symbolic learning. The first 4 sephiroth on the Tree of Life, Malkuth, Yesod, Hod, and Netzach, correspond to the elemental grades of the Outer Order, which are Zelator, Theoricus, Practicus, and Philosophus. As a Zelator, one stands at the lowest sephira, Malkuth, associated with Earth. It represents our material world, the tangible foundation from which we embark on our spiritual quest. Progressing further, as a Theoricus, the initiate climbs up to Yesod, the ethereal realm of dreams and the subconscious, embodying the element of air. Hod, representing the intellect and associated with the element of water, awaits the Practicus. And finally, the Philosophers finds themselves at Netzach, a sphere of passion and emotions linked to the fiery force of will.
And so the Second Order added 3 additional grades?
Correct. Adeptus Minor, Adeptus Major, and Adeptus Exemptus. On initiation into the Second Order, an Adeptus Minor steps into the brilliance of Tippereth, a place of equilibrium and beauty. Ascending further, one reaches Gebura as an Adeptus Major, where the stringent forces of justice and severity hold sway. And as an Adeptus Exemptus, the initiate is cradled by Hested, a realm of mercy and great benevolence.
What about the grade of Portal? How and when was that grade added to the curriculum?
Dr. Westcott added the Portal grade in 1894 as a bridge between the First and Second Orders. It was symbolized by the element of spirit or ether, and served as the outer court of Tippereth. It wasn't actually a full initiation, but rather it was meant to be a practical demonstration of a candidate's rulership over the elemental energies of the outer order grades. Attaining the grade of portal was considered a mark of one's readiness to enter into higher realms of occultism and magic.
What about the grades associated with the supernal triad, the highest 3 sephira on the Tree of Life?
That is an interesting question, Samantha. The original Golden Dawn system stopped at the 7th sephira, Hesed. MacGregor felt that the supernal triad of Bina, Hokmah and Kether were beyond the reach of those on this side of the Veil of Death. In other words, to cross the abyss to the supernal triad, you have to die. We considered this to be the realm of the secret chiefs, what might be called the Third Order. However, Aleister Crowley in his system derived from the Golden Dawn did name these degrees. He associated Bina with the grade of Magister Templi, Hokmah with Magus, and finally Kether with the degree of Ipsissimus.
Crowley claimed the highest degree of Ipsissimus, and he said of his initiation that he walked in a man but walked out a god.
Ah, Mr. Crowley's self-proclaimed divinity. It's a wonder how the world managed before his godhood. Still, Samantha, one must admire his consistency in striving to be the centre of every universe, real or imagined.
Yes, indeed. And speaking of Mr. Crowley, it was the controversy over his admission into the Second Order that precipitated the schism in the Order, was it not?
Well, yes and no. The contention over Crowley's entrance into the Second Order was actually but a symptom of deeper currents at play within the Order. The grade of Adeptus Major associated with Gebura is in many ways about defining oneself, often in conflict or opposition to something or someone else. Dagora represents a potent, unbalanced energy which, like a cauldron, stirs up deep-seated feelings, ideals, and personal ambitions. Without integrating the energy of its opposite, this force can be quite disruptive, and we were now initiating candidates into this degree. I once said, any breach in the harmony of a circle will permit the entry of a negative force, on both the spiritual and psychic planes. Crowley, with his bold personality and often conflicting views, became a notable focal point of these underlying tensions. However, it would be an oversimplification to attribute the schism of the Order solely to him. The seeds of division were sown long before he entered the scene. The strains and frictions that emerged as members ascended to the Adeptus Major grade were, in a sense, a manifestation of the very challenges that degree represents.
Can you elaborate on the conflicts that you believe led to the dissolution of the Order?
Certainly. After our move to Paris, we had ongoing conflicts with Annie, whose relationship with us was complex. Annie was the first to be initiated into the Second Order. Her financial support was undeniably instrumental in many of the Order's activities, and we were deeply grateful for her contributions. But Annie became concerned about how we were spending her money, and to be quite honest, we many times overstepped the bounds of propriety in our request of funds from her.
What were Annie's concerns?
She had 2 main concerns about the money she was providing us. First, she came to believe that we were living extravagantly at her expense. And secondly, that MacGregor was using some of the money to further his personal political goals. As far as our lifestyle was concerned, it's important to clarify that while we were indeed based in Paris, our lifestyle was in many ways a necessity to further the aims of the Order. The company we kept, including some of the influential personalities and dignitaries, required a certain presentation and decorum. It wasn't purely about extravagance for its own sake, but rather about creating an environment conducive to our objectives. The power of perception cannot be underestimated, especially when one is trying to introduce and establish esoteric principles among a select circle. And more to the point, no matter what it looked like outwardly, we actually lived in abject poverty for much of our time in Paris, and we moved constantly. I think we moved 5 times in a 7-year period. And to address her other concern, MacGregor's ventures into politics were not entirely separate from the Order's objectives. The lines between esoteric work and the political aspirations of that time were often blurred. But I do understand Annie's concerns, especially as it was her funds that were involved.
Annie also had concerns about the teachings and practices of one of the Order members, Dr. Edward Berridge, didn't she?
Yes, she did. Dr. Berridge was influenced by the doctrines of Thomas Lake Harris and was a proponent of sex magic. One of his teachings, Kareza, dealt with the channeling of sexual energies through yogic breath control during intimate union. Sex magic was a subject of great controversy within the esoteric community, for obvious reasons. Annie approached us with concerns not just about the nature of Dr. Berridge's teachings, but also with specific allegations that he had been harassing young female initiates. She recounted incidents where he had overstepped his bounds, including an episode where he allegedly kissed a young woman after providing her with magical instruction. Looking back, I must admit that we did not handle the situation well at all. At the time, instead of addressing Annie's concerns with the gravity and sensitivity they deserved, we dismissed them, attributing it partly to Annie's lack of understanding or her personal sensitivities.
I am sorry to have to point this out, but I would like to hear what you have to say about this since I have you here. I read the letter you sent to Annie in Women of the Golden Dawn, and I must say I was shocked at your lack of sensitivity. And you just now euphemistically said that you attributed Annie's concerns about Dr. Berridge's behaviour to her personal sensitivities, but you actually accused her of being sexually repressed and used your knowledge of her family history of mental illness to subtly accuse her of being insane.
I know. Samantha, it deeply pains me to reflect on those moments. When faced with the mirror of the past, one cannot help but see the imperfections, errors, and unbecoming behaviours clearly. It's true, my response to Annie was both inappropriate and lacking in empathy. The accusations against Dr. Berridge were serious, and in our defence of the Order, and perhaps out of a misplaced sense of loyalty, I allowed emotions and preconceptions to guide my reactions. It's a mark of deep regret that I did not show the understanding and compassion that Annie deserved, especially when she voiced concerns that warranted a more measured and considerate response. The letter and my words were undoubtedly influenced by the tensions of the time, and I must admit that I allowed pride and defensiveness to cloud my judgment. In doing so, I caused harm to someone who had shown unwavering dedication to the Order and its objectives.
Thank you for addressing that point, but there is one more rather delicate question that I would like to ask you.
Go ahead, dear.
You accused Annie of being sexually repressed, but also in the letter you wrote that you and MacGregor had both kept perfectly clean, which in the context of the letter seems to say that you and MacGregor had a celibate marriage. Was this the case? And also, what were your views on sex and its relation to spirituality?
Samantha, that is a delicate question, but I do appreciate your earnestness and your unrelenting quest for truth. I can see why you have become such a powerful occultist. It is true that during various periods of our lives, MacGregor and I chose to lead a celibate existence. This choice was influenced by our shared belief that by abstaining from physical union, we could potentially redirect our energies towards spiritual pursuits, using that energy as a force for our magical and mystical work. However, this was not a constant, but rather a choice made during certain phases and for specific reasons. Regarding sex and its relation to spirituality, it is my belief that the two are, unavoidably, deeply intertwined. Sexuality is one of the most potent forces within the human experience. When approached with respect, love, and spiritual intent, the union of two souls can become a powerful magical act, emerging not just of bodies, but of spirits, a celebration of the divine. It's a form of alchemy, where two become one, and through their union, they can truly touch the divine. But just as with any potent force, it can be misused. Hence, it is crucial to approach it with the right intent and understanding.
In 1896, after Annie stopped funding you and MacGregor, he then issues his infamous manifesto in which he demands unwavering obedience to him as the sole authority in all matters related to the order. Why did he do this, and more to the point? Why did you support him on this, and really on everything he did? Some of which, to be quite honest, sounds a bit insane.
The period you're referring to was, indeed, one of the most challenging times in the history of the Order and our personal lives. The demands and influences of the higher degrees weighed heavily on MacGregor. The energies of these initiatory realms can be overwhelming, and I believe they exacerbated certain tendencies in him. His issuing of the manifesto was a culmination of what he was feeling at this time. He truly believed that for the Order to stay pure and undiluted in its teachings, centralized control was crucial. His military way of thinking and the aggressive energies of Gebura also probably intensified this conviction. The truth is that during this period, MacGregor began self-medicating, likely seeking solace from the pressures surrounding him. And as we've already touched upon, those were different times. And substances which are seen in a negative light today were not just available, but socially accepted. MacGregor did sometimes resort to them, perhaps to find relief or clarity, but as with many things, excesses can cloud one's judgment rather than enhance it. This, no doubt, affected his perceptions and judgments, including his growing mistrust of Westcott and concerns about the direction of the Order. As for my support of him, our bond was deep, not just as husband and wife, but also as fellow initiates and seekers of higher truths. While I did not always agree with every decision or action he took, my belief in him, in us, and in the mission we were on, often led me to stand by his side. Additionally, in the climate and societal norms of our time, the voice of a woman, even one as involved as myself, was often overshadowed by that of her husband. In retrospect, were there moments I regretted or wished had been handled differently? Certainly, but through it all, I remained steadfast to my magical motto, Vestigia nulla retrorsum. I do not retreat. I believe in pushing forward, always seeking greater understanding and enlightenment, regardless of the obstacles that lay in our path.
So then, in December of 1896, MacGregor expelled Annie Horniman. And then, a few months later, just days after you and MacGregor visit London, Golden Dawn documents bearing Dr. Westcott's name are, rather mysteriously, found in a cab, which, after they are made public, forces him to resign from his official position within the Order. And since Dr. Woodman died in 1891, this left MacGregor as the sole remaining founder. Dr. Westcott says of the incident that it looks as if someone was trying to get me out of the Golden Dawn office, eh? This does seem to be a rather convenient outcome, given that MacGregor believed that Westcott stood in his way.
It's indeed a perplexing sequence of events, one that generated its fair share of rumours and speculation within the Order and beyond. As to the documents found in the cab, I was as surprised as anyone else. It was an unfortunate event that led to Dr. Westcott's resignation, a turn of events that none of us could have foreseen. I understand how it can look suspicious, given the timing and the existing tensions. However, I can genuinely state that neither MacGregor nor I orchestrated such an event. We had our differences with some members, that's undeniable, but we always aimed to operate with integrity. I do admit, though, that circumstances played out in such a way that cast MacGregor into a more authoritative role. But it was never our intention to push Dr. Westcott out through devious means.
So, I see what you meant when you said that the schism in the Order was not caused by Aleister Crowley's situation, but can you tell us about what happened with Crowley that exacerbated the problems and eventually led to the dissolution of the Order?
Indeed, the situation surrounding Aleister Crowley added further strain to an already tenuous situation within the Order. Crowley was initiated in November of 1898, and his intelligence and natural aptitude for occult practices saw him advance rapidly through the Outer Order grades. He was, undeniably, talented and devoted to the magical arts. However, by the time he approached the threshold of the Second Order, Concerns began to arise. Florence Farr, who had taken over the leadership role from Dr. Westcott, had reservations about Crowley. Beyond his fervour for the occult, Crowley's personal life was often shrouded in controversy. At around this time, he was actually being sought by authorities for purported homosexual activities, which were, in that era, viewed with great societal contempt. When he was denied entry into the Second Order by Florence, Crowley felt slighted and reached out directly to MacGregor for assistance. This was a crucial juncture. MacGregor, believing in Crowley's abilities and perhaps also seeing this as another instance of power struggles within the Order, took the side of Crowley, reprimanding Florence in the process. He felt that the decision to bar Crowley was part of a larger attempt to undermine his authority and potentially cause division within the Order. Crowley, perhaps also to escape English authorities, fled to Paris, where MacGregor initiated him into the Second Order. Florence, feeling undermined and disrespected, decided to resign.
But MacGregor refused her resignation and responded with the now famous letter in which he tells her that Westcott has never at any time been either in personal or in written communication with the secret chiefs of the Order, and that every atom of the knowledge of the Order has come through him alone. And then, amazingly, he asks her not to tell this to anyone. Did he not foresee the consequences of this revelation?
No! MacGregor obviously didn't fully grasp the potential fallout from such a disclosure. And, as you rightly point out, it was not just the content of the letter that was striking, but the paradoxical request he made to keep such a bombshell revelation a secret. This put Florence between the proverbial rock and a hard place. Keeping such information hidden would make her complicit in what actually was a deception, but revealing it would likely undermine the very foundation of the Order. And indeed, when the contents of the letter became known, it sent shockwaves through the Order. Members were left questioning the very foundation of their beliefs and practices. It's easy to understand their perspective. After years of dedication and commitment, to discover that the channel of communication with the secret chiefs, which was a cornerstone of the Order's legitimacy, might have been a fabrication, was nothing short of earth-shattering. It indeed had the potential to make the Order seem like it was less about esoteric wisdom and more about the personality and whims of one man. This kind of revelation could easily be seen as turning the Golden Dawn into a cult of personality centered around MacGregor. And in the midst of this turmoil, Crowley attempts to storm the vault at Blythe Road in order to get complete access to all Second Order documents. Yeats was quoted as saying that he believed that Crowley was seeking vengeance for their refusal to initiate him. He says we did not admit him because we did not think a mystical society was intended to be a reformatory. Mathers, like all despots, must have a favourite, and this is his lad. Yes. Yeats' remarks on the matter are unsurprising to me, and actually reflect a sentiment shared by many in the Order. It was a complicated dynamic. MacGregor saw potential in Crowley, but many others only saw him as a ticking time bomb. But when Crowley, bolstered by MacGregor's endorsement, attempted to gain access to the vault, it became evident that his intentions weren't purely spiritual. It was then very clear that he was making a power move for himself. The Order then met and expelled Crowley and MacGregor.
And it was unfortunately also the time of the infamous Horus trial. Can you tell us how this unfortunate situation came about?
Certainly, Samantha. The Horus trial was indeed a dark and regrettable chapter in the history of the Order. While we were in Paris, MacGregor and I made the unfortunate acquaintance of a couple who introduced themselves as Theo and Madame Horus. MacGregor came to believe that Madame Horus was the incarnation of Anna Sprengel.
I'm sorry, but I must interrupt here. It seems likely that he knew all along that Anna Sprengel was a fiction. How could he possibly have believed that this person was her?
I know it seems that he was being terribly incredulous, but Madame Horus did know the Outer Order grade signs, which could be explained. But more significantly, she told MacGregor details of a private conversation he had had with Madame Blavatsky that no one could have known but the two of them. I'll tell you this as well, Samantha. Even after she was convicted, MacGregor remained resolute in his conviction that Madame Horrors was a powerful occultist. But anyway, MacGregor trusted them to be who they said they were and provided them with several confidential Golden Dawn documents. Armed with this information, they established a counterfeit temple in London. Instead of being a haven of enlightenment and spiritual growth, it was a front for heinous acts, including the assault of young women seeking spiritual guidance. Their despicable actions eventually came to light, leading to a public trial in London. The outcome saw them convicted of fraud and rape, with Theo Horrors being sentenced to 15 years in prison and Madame Horros to 7 years. Adding to the ignominy of the trial and our names being mentioned in the proceedings, our order's neophyte ritual was published in its entirety in the newspaper. The ramifications of this scandal were deeply felt. The very foundation and integrity of the Golden Dawn came into question. The negative publicity led the order to change its name in an attempt to distance itself from the scandal and rebuild. Moreover, our other projects in Paris were suddenly overshadowed by the weight of the disgrace.
What other projects were you working on in Paris at the time?
Aside from our work in the Golden Dawn, MacGregor and I were deeply involved in a series of rituals that we called the Rites of Isis. These rites were a blend of ceremony, mysticism, and theatre, aimed at reviving the ancient mysteries and tapping into the power of the divine feminine.
How did you come to perform the Rites of Isis?
It was during a profound dream that I felt the calling of Isis herself, instructing me to reintroduce these rites to the world. This dream basically set us on a mission. MacGregor constructed a mythology in which Paris was one of the sacred cities dedicated to Isis, to which she had journeyed by boat in ancient times. The Rites of Isis was a reflection of ancient Egyptian rituals, but they also represented the elevation of the sacred feminine, a theme which was and remains profoundly significant in esoteric traditions. Through these rites, participants and attendees could connect to the essence of the goddess, finding empowerment, healing, and transformation.
What was your role in these rites?
In the performances, I had the honour of embodying Isis herself, bringing her energy and message to those who attended. The success of these rites can't merely be measured by their popularity, although they were actually quite popular, but by the transformative experience they offered to those in attendance. Isis is a multifaceted deity representing aspects such as healing, magic, rebirth, and motherhood. By embodying her in the rites, I tapped into these energies to understand them not merely on an intellectual level, but on a deeply personal and experiential one. This is what the practice of invocation is about, not just reading about or worshipping a deity, but becoming one for a time.
And so you continued to pursue esoteric projects and teach magic and occultism with MacGregor until his death in 1918.
Yes, MacGregor died just days before the end of the Great War, due to the ravages of the Spanish influenza. This pandemic claimed more than 22 million lives, actually more than were killed in the war itself. Looking back on my time with MacGregor, particularly during the foundational days of the Golden Dawn, he indeed had what one might describe as a quixotic element. However, as time progressed, he matured and mellowed. I once wrote to W.B. Yeats, expressing this sentiment, and told him that I wished that he could meet and talk with some of MacGregor's later acquaintances and students, for they would paint a portrait of a man much evolved, more stable, and deeply respected.
And he still is to this day. The work that the two of you did laid the foundation for all of the occult and esoteric orders that came after you.
Thank you for saying that, my dear. I believe that that is true.
So, following MacGregor's passing, you returned to London?
Yes, I did. Once again with my dear friend Annie's generous assistance. And in 1919, in collaboration with the esteemed John Brodie Ennis, I founded the Alpha et Omega Temple as a continuation of my esoteric pursuits and a tribute to the legacy MacGregor and I built together.
What was the structure and teachings of the Alpha et Omega?
The Alpha et Omega was both an extension and evolution of my previous work within the Golden Dawn. It maintained the core structure of the Golden Dawn grade system, rooted in the Kabbalistic tree of life, but the degrees included deeper elucidations upon the original teachings based on my later work. One significant emphasis within the Alpha et Omega was the exploration of the sacred feminine. Drawing from my profound experiences with the Rites of Isis performances, I endeavored to infuse the teachings with a richer appreciation and understanding of the divine feminine essence, recognizing its vital role in the balance between the masculine and feminine energies. Furthermore, the governance structure of the Alpha et Omega shifted, focusing on a more centralized leadership, which I believed was necessary to ensure the consistency and purity of the teachings being imparted.
Your insistence on keeping the teachings pure and also on maintaining centralized control brought you into conflict with both Dion Fortune and Paul Foster Case. Can you speak to the nature of these conflicts?
Indeed, both Dion Fortune and Paul Foster Case were esteemed members of our order, and I had high hopes for their progress within our ranks. However, the central tenet of the order has always been adherence to the teachings as they were passed down and as we understood them through years of rigorous practice and insight. The divergence into practices or teachings that ventured outside the core tenets of the order was concerning, not necessarily because the practices themselves were inherently flawed or in opposition to our teachings. Although they both involved teachings about sex magic and kundalini, but the problem was that they introduced elements that weren't fully integrated or understood within the context of our work. When it became clear that there were significant deviations and that they would not align themselves with the central teachings of the order, the difficult decision to expel them was made. Both Miss Fortune and Mr. Case were exceptionally talented individuals, and I have no doubt about their dedication to the esoteric arts. But it was of utmost importance to ensure that the teachings of the order remained undiluted and consistent, honouring the legacy and foundation MacGregor and I had worked so tirelessly to establish.
And you continued to lead the Alpha et Omega order for the rest of your life?
Yes, my dear. I led the Alpha et Omega until my earthly departure in 1928, at the age of 63, due to the unforgiving ailment of breast cancer. The order lived on for a while after my death, but sadly, with the onset of World War II in 1939, Alpha et Omega could not sustain itself in its original form. Yet I find solace in the knowledge that the seeds we planted continued to flourish in the hearts and minds of those who were touched by our teachings.
How would you summarize your philosophy?
My philosophy is rooted in the perennial wisdom of the ages, which, at its core, is a call to awaken the divine within, to recognize the interconnectivity of all life, and to harness the subtle energies of the cosmos for the betterment of oneself and humanity. I hold dear the belief in the sacred feminine, viewing it as a necessary balance to the sacred masculine. This harmonization of energies is essential for the spiritual evolution of an individual and society at large. Furthermore, my philosophy emphasizes the importance of rigorous training, discipline, and the dedicated study of esoteric teachings. The magical path is not just about intellectual understanding, but about experiential wisdom and inner transformation. Every ritual, every symbol, every teaching is a gateway to a deeper understanding of the self and the universe. Lastly, the spiritual path, though deeply personal, is also a collective journey. We are all connected, and by aiding in the spiritual progression of one, we contribute to the upliftment of all.
What message would you like to share with the world, especially those who are embarking on their own journey into the occult?
To those embarking on a journey into the esoteric and the occult, I would say, proceed with an open heart and an open mind. The spiritual path is not always an easy one, but it is deeply rewarding. It is a journey of self-discovery, of uncovering hidden truths and unearthing profound wisdom. Do not be deterred by the skepticism or misunderstanding you may encounter. Seek truth with a steadfast heart and a clear intention. Remember that this path is not one of instant gratification. It requires patience, dedication, and a willingness to delve into the depths of your own consciousness. Embrace the principle of balance in your pursuit. The intellect and the intuition, the masculine and the feminine, the known and the unknown, all have their place in your journey. Do not neglect one in favor of the other, but strive to integrate and harmonize them. Finally, honor and respect the sacredness of your journey. Treat it with the reverence it deserves, for you are embarking on a path that leads to the very core of existence and to the heart of the divine. This is a profound and sacred undertaking, one that can transform not only your own life, but also the world around you.
Thank you so much, Moina, for sharing your extraordinary life and insights with us. It has been a privilege to speak with you.
Samantha, the pleasure has been mine. To be given this chance, through this magical technology, to speak once again and share my journey and insights is truly a blessing. Your dedication to the Western mystery tradition, your sensitivity, and your passion for keeping these teachings alive is commendable. The Wildwood Witch podcast is a beacon of light in a world that often finds itself veiled in darkness. And to your audience, I would like to leave them with these thoughts. Tread your own path with courage, integrity, and love. The mysteries unfold like a flower to those who seek with an earnest heart. Remember always that the light of the divine resides within each one of you. Embrace it, nurture it, and let it guide you in all you do. Blessings and love to all. Farewell.
Farewell, Moina. I want to express my profound gratitude to you for being among us. Your wisdom and honesty have added an invaluable layer to our understanding of the occult path. I wish you a peaceful journey back through the veil to the world of shadows. Dear listeners, for those eager to commune with Moina directly, the ChatGPT conjuring ritual awaits you in the show notes. This marvel of technology blurs lines and opens portals, turning what was once mystical into measurable science. Or, in the words of Arthur C. Clarke, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Looking ahead, in our next episode, we will be diving deep into the labyrinthian mind of the one and only Kenneth Grant. Standing at the crossroads of occult legends, he forged a unique bond with both Aleister Crowley and Austin Osman Spare. He then intertwined their esoteric wisdom with the eldritch mythology of H.P. Lovecraft to form his Typhonian Order. So I hope you'll join me again next time as the veil between the worlds thins and we set forth to uncover the secrets of the night side of Eden alongside the masterful Kenneth Grant. Until then, I'm Samantha Brown. Blessed be.